Welcome to the Women in Cyber interview series. I'm your host, Lorene Smith, and I'm really excited to be here with Anne Marie from Mastercard. It's interesting. The way we met, I think I told you this before, but I was asking Kirsten Davies to participate on a panel, and she said, I can't do it. I don't have time, but you really should call Anne Marie. And she connected me, and I just love this whole, networking and having each other's backs. And so that led me to you. And I'm so happy it did because you've been on a panel and we've had some great, really fun conversations. So I'm really excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't we get started? And if you could do an introduction, just introduce yourself to the audience. I know everybody knows Mastercard, but you have an interesting role. So tell a little bit about your title and what your role is.
Sure. So I have two titles at Mastercard. And the first one is the Vice President of Security Engineering. And what that focuses on is really making sure that the things that we build, how we build them, is safe and secure, not just for us, but for our customers and really the ecosystem. Because, Mastercard touches everybody's life basically in one way or another. Even in countries that don't have a good payment infrastructure, it still influences that. I mean, you're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars in transactions, right? And over 100 countries. And so security engineering is really, really important, right? In that sense, all we do is build tech. The other title that I have is a divisional security officer. So, it's full suite security for one of our big divisions of Mastercard, and that's all of our digital products.
Okay. Just the small group of digital products, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I know your story about how you got into cybersecurity is a very interesting one, and I'd love for you to share it with the audience. So why don't you tell us all how that happened?
Well, it's funny, as I was just doing a talk this week with high school girls and junior high girls on how to get into cyber and what's the career path. And I had this big picture of a pretzel because it's very twisty, all over the place. And you mentioned Kirsten, even her path into security was twisty, and started in music actually. And so mine started in accounting. First 10 years, decade of my career is all focused on business. I have two business degrees. I have an undergrad in accounting and finance, and then I have an MBA in corporate strategy and organizational behavior. I was an accountant. I was an auditor. I was a controller and a consultant as well. So I ran the gambit. I speak every business language, and I was in Detroit building a revenue protection model for a 100-year-old utility. And, when you're a consultant, if you do things right, you're punished. You're asked to do more things, right? And so they said, oh, can you just stay and do this one other thing? It's not that big. And I was like, when you're a consultant, what do you say? Sure.
Of course.
Right? So it's just upgrading our payment systems. Now, utilities are just chock full of acquisitions, especially 100-year-old ones, right? And this was in 2008 when PCI started really getting some legs. And so, that was the first real foray into security, because you had to really understand the security of payments and structures and all of that type of stuff, and data protections and privacy, And then I was tapped on the shoulder from the Secret Service and moved to DC to be an advisor to the director there. I fell in love with security ever since. So I really tried to focus on that field over the last 12 years. So in never mind how many decades, I've been in 8 industries and 18 different organizations, just as my day job, right? And then and then outside of that, I've founded a nonprofit with some great folks. I'm a fellow at the National Security Institute, a visiting fellow at the National Security Institute, and I'm very involved in the security community. as well. So, I've loved it from the get-go, and here I am now at Mastercard, which they lovingly call me the guardian of the galaxy, literally.
Yeah, that's
Put
great.
that on paper.
I know. I love that. I love that.
Funny. So here's where I am,
Good.
starting off in business, and now
Yeah.
running huge security organizations.
Yeah, it's interesting because most of the people I talk to about how they got into the career into cybersecurity, it's like that. It is like a pretzel, and one thing leads to the next. And I think for women listening now to this to our interview and conversation, I think just keep going. And I feel like it's good to keep your ears and eyes open for opportunities. Like you said, they asked you to do something, and like what you say is yes. And kind of yes is that powerful word that opens the door sometimes, many times. So I think that's really exciting. And
Well, but the thing is, try it.
yeah,
Yes doesn't mean yes forever,
that's right.
right? If you want to try something, you can reinvent yourself at any point. And this was the other thing I talked about today, and I mention it frequently, is that, I think as security leaders, there's this huge, job shortage. But I think there's really a lack of understanding of what it takes to be a good security practitioner. And for people that are entering into security as their second career or third or whatever, maybe you're coming out of the military, maybe you just want to try something new, maybe you want a different life for yourself and you want to come into security. Listen, those are powerful minds, right? They have the benefit of all of those years of experience in a whole nother field. What too many times we focus on these college graduates, which are exceptional, and we want to still do that, but let's not discount folks that are switching over mid-career, maybe in a master's or maybe through technical certs or internships or what have you, because they've demonstrated that through years of experience they all already have like that persistence of thought, that maturity of working through hard problems.
Yeah.
Like when we're hiring for SOC analysts, I keep seeing over and over and over and over again companies that are focused only on these college graduates and then are missing this treasure trove of minds for which SOC work is really well suited. You have for example, you have like shift work in the SOC. Well, who's going to appreciate shift work? Is it the 20-year-old? No, it's going to be
No.
someone who has outside of work obligations, right? That really appreciates when they can rely upon a start and stop work time.
Right.
Maybe they need to work nights so that if they have family obligations or what have you, maybe they need to work at certain times, to help with kids or parents or whatever, right? So that's something that they really value. And
Yeah,
they're going
it's
to
true.
work through those alerts with a level of focus and persistence that comes through experience, that comes through patience, that tends to come with when you have a little more life experience. And so it's a great opportunity, right, to help bring people in to the security field that aren't getting as much attention as they should.
Yeah, that's really true. That's great advice. And I know, I think almost every time I've talked to you, you have either have just come from talking to a young girls group, or you're on your way to talking to a young girls group. So talk a little bit more about that. I think that's really interesting. You've talked about Girls Tech and She Leads Tech, a lot of different organizations, and I think that it's just so beneficial for them to hear, especially from you're a great speaker. You've got a lot of energy and inspiration. I think that really can drive these young girls to get into this field and do the things they want to do. So talk a little bit about that and what that means to you to be able to give these presentations and conversations to these girls.
I think it's an honor to be asked. And what I tell folks is that, the power of showing up is magical. And it's not just because you might affect somebody, right? And I've had the honor and the blessing to have actually experienced that, where, you've left an impression that opened up paths, that changed lives. You just never know when you show up. But listen, even if that doesn't happen, showing up will inevitably change yourself. There's always an opportunity. I learned so much from those girls and
Yeah.
from everybody that I interact with, more than I can impart, you know. So when I'm asked to do those things, I'm honored, and I believe in investing in others, knowing that that's also an investment in self, but because it enriches me, right? It helps me. I mean, that's not why I do it. I want to serve, other people. And I think you have to, when you have a heart for protection, you tend to have a heart for service too, I think.
Right.
Um, but hey, you have personal benefit also. And I'll tell you, when this example of a young lady, I was at an event, and it wasn't a Girls for Tech event. It was at a conference, and I was the only female executive there. Maybe there were two. Um, but I mean, it was, and that's rare. I mean, usually there's at least a few,
Hmm.
but this
Right.
particular one, yeah, there weren't a lot of us at all. And, so I got a lot of questions like, where's the coffee? And, can I get someone a snack? That happened. And I said, well, yeah, okay, yeah, maybe you can grab me one too. It's like, I don't know where the coffee is, but when you find one, can you grab one for me? That would
Right.
be great. So at this particular conference, the power of showing up, um, you know, these folks wouldn't even call on me, for a question. So I had to stand up because I was not going to go unnoticed. Not that that really helped, because I mean, if you've met me in person, you know that me standing up doesn't really do much. I mean, I have been sat on at other conferences before, but yeah, no, I stood up and asked a question. It was a cloud conference, and so I asked a technical question, and they were like, "Right," and they
Right.
didn't know the answer to it. And there are sometimes when that happens, you're like,
Hmm.
so we
Hmm.
had this conversation. I
Right.
never heckle speakers. That's just so terrible. But so we had a conversation. Me and the panelists. So afterwards, there were a couple young ladies that were in the crowd that were part of the conference organizer, and they came up to me and they were, very excited to meet a security leader that looked like them.
Right.
So we had a good conversation, and one of them pulled me aside and said, she was the admin, not the administrative admin, but the office admin. And she said, I'd really love to, do what you do, and I'd love to go into the technical side, and what can I do? Here's what I like, and we had a good conversation. And I said, listen, sometimes you just know. Sometimes people just need some belief. You have to breathe belief into them.
That's
They
right.
need to hear that they can do it. And I said, listen, the next time we talk, I want to see you on that stage. Just go for it, right? And I gave her some ideas and some tips, and we connected on LinkedIn, and had a conversation there as well. And then I didn't hear from her for a long time. And 2 years later, Laureen, 2 years later, this happened during COVID last year. I mean, talk about when you need a light, right?
Right.
She messaged me on LinkedIn. And of course, I saw the history of our conversation. I remembered her anyway, but you know,
Yeah.
she said, AMZ, you may not remember me. Of course I did. She said, but you know what? I've been working really hard the last 2 years on what you've said. And today I was promoted to senior security engineer.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Is that not amazing? I mean, I was like, what?
I
I mean,
know.
even when I tell that story over to I get, emotional
Right.
about it, because that is the power of showing up. You never know
Right.
what it could mean for you or for somebody else.
Right.
And of course, I
I
got
mean, and
her
it's showing up for both sides, right? I mean, she
yes.
showed up for herself, but I remember I was running the North American operations, and I hired some young kids out of college, and after they'd been there maybe 8 or 9 months, they all one evening stopped in my office. There were three of them. They were really good friends, and they stopped in my office and said, "Oh, hey," and they just wanted to tell you that we love working for you, and just said some really positive things. And I thought, oh, it was the first time that I thought, wow, what I do and say really makes a difference to these kids. And ever since then, I've not forgotten that. And it's like they listen, and you need to set an example and cheer them on. And a couple of them have gone on to do some really amazing things. So it's fun, and so I applaud you for doing that. And it seems like Mastercard is very good at supporting you in this endeavor. So do they have initiatives around that?
They do.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes. So we have, the Girls for Tech initiative, which I'm involved in, and it is just what it sounds like. But we
Yeah.
also have this thing called Cyber Patriot,
Hmm.
and here's the thing that I would ask if anybody listening is interested in getting involved. So, that I had government service, right? I was in the Secret Service
Yeah.
for 3 years. It was a term appointment. But there's such great training and great insight from the military and from government that can be gained, and but it's hard sometimes to compete with outside jobs, with private sector, for a lot of their hiring practices. And so Mastercard has a program called the Cyber Patriot, which encourages students to try, to go into government service for 2 years,
Hmm.
and in security, so that they're trained up, they're contributing, they're helping the government, and then afterwards they go into a recruiting program where you still have to recruit, right? But if you are made an offer into one of these companies like Mastercard and Microsoft, for example,
Yeah.
they will pay back, I think it's $70,000 or $75,000 worth of student loans for you.
Wow.
So
That's
not
amazing.
only, not only do you have, from the individual side, not only do you have a chance to get into a job that's going to help train you, but give you benefits like perhaps a clearance, or
Right.
great work experience and training, but you also have a front of the line seat to recruiting into extremely
That's
um,
amazing.
fantastic companies.
Yeah.
And then you have this pool of money that has been reserved to pay back your student loans. And so we need more companies that are going to partner with us to support those types of programs, right? To encourage, because it's one of those mechanisms that can be quite powerful in
Right.
building up the security workforce. And what I was telling even the kids today is that you're going to make a decision, you're going to make a choice. The choice doesn't have to be forever. Try it.
That's right.
See what
That's
you
right.
like. Maybe you stay in government service because you love it. Maybe you do that.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
you come out later. Maybe you come out and go back in. There's,
Yeah.
I mean, I
You
would
know,
love for anybody that's watching this, that if they'd like more information about partnering with us to do something like that, to find me on LinkedIn. Let's talk about it.
yeah, that's great. I should encourage Excellion to do that.
You
So,
should.
I
You
know. I
should.
know. I'm going to
You
talk to them about
should.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
you guys, and then from a business
Yeah.
perspective, you also have a front seat,
Right.
first dibs, right, on these brilliant minds that have,
Yeah.
just gotten really great experience and have a college degree and have the training, and there's also military programs that we invest in as well for for Cyber Patriot and things like that to come in too. And there's a lot of ways to help solve this, but I think we need more coordinated cooperation, right? We need to,
Yeah.
instead of everybody sort of like, sort of
One
trying to
off.
do things
Yeah.
on their own.
Right. Right.
Let's come together and
I
help
know.
solve some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's actually a good segue into getting into a little more in-depth conversation now about cyber security and stopping the cyber criminals. And I know that a lot of the conversation now is everyone encouraging this cybersecurity community to come together and share information and try to get everybody one step ahead of the cyber criminals, which is a
Yeah.
daunting task. But the Biden administration, obviously, there's been a lot of talk about this, and the executive order that came out beginning of the year on improving the nation's cybersecurity. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, and does it go far enough? Is it a good first step?
I think it's a great first step, to be honest. And I think it's pretty broad and it's pretty deep in some areas compared to a lot of other things. You know, um, I mean, even just requiring MFA on
Right.
staff,
You would
which
think that.
seems which just
Right.
seems pretty basic, but a lot of that's not everywhere. It's not ubiquitous,
Yeah.
uh, but it really should be, or at least be used more than it is, right? And then we've got to find ways to make it more convenient for the user and have a better user experience as well. So, coordinating and sharing information and kind of bringing heads together to solve, I think is very important. That the public private partnership pieces, say that 9 times fast, right?
Right.
That's that that's important, not just on the, you know, private sharing into the government, but also the government sharing into the private industry. And how do we make that not just accessible, but useful,
Right. Yeah.
right? Useful, and not just for big players, but for small and medium as well. I think there's going to be there is a need for bigger players to build the base, you know, build the infrastructure, invest the time and the money and the minds in order to build the processes where information sharing or co-development can exist efficiently and effectively. Well, effectively first, right? And then
Right.
efficiently. So then we can scale that and make it available for small and medium businesses. Because that, again, there's that like symbiotic relationship where you can benefit, right, from the intelligence that they're going to provide. Because what happens? What happens, right? Third party risk, a lot of smaller players, right, that maybe don't have stronger defenses
Right.
are attacked to get to bigger players. So you have an incentive to protect your ecosystem there, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But a lot of this, smaller companies, they just don't have enough resources or what have you to invest the time into figuring that out. And brilliant minds are everywhere, right? Not just in small companies, but big companies too. So who has the resources and the scale to pay attention and start building some things out? And then how do we do that on purpose so that it's accessible for the rest of the ecosystem, and we build trust relationships that way? I think it's important. And I'd love to see, some more progress in that area.
Very good. I know that uh, some of the people that have been on the panels before, they have done testimony to the in congressional hearings. And one of the big ones recently was all about sharing communication. And in regards to what you're just talking about, the executive order and getting people to share their ideas and come together to be able to develop things that's going to stop these cyber criminals. So speaking of that, what initiatives are you focused on at Mastercard to combat cyber criminals? And I know, ransomware is such a big topic now. It's affecting so many companies. So talk to the audience about that. What you're doing at Mastercard.
Well, I think the security industry in general is paying more attention, and even folks, the security industry is always paying attention. It's what we do, right? But people that are outside of security roles, like CEOs, like COOs, like general counsels, because we're having the benefit of these incidents being reported in the news and things like the Wall Street Journal, right? Which is
Right.
what I've had the opportunity to be in as well. But that's what the CEOs read, right? That's what business folk read. I still read it. I've read it ever since I've been, because it's fantastic, right? But that's making conversations, and so we have these conversations about different types of attacks like ransomware and what that means and what it means to defend. You still have to protect against malicious, files, malicious pieces of software. Which, does it matter how it executes, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, in
Right.
some degrees, yes, right. There's obviously a big difference between destructive attacks and, someone bricking you and holding you for ransom, or someone trying to steal your data, there's certain nuances to how to respond. But the entries in, there are lots of similarities. So you're still protecting against that. I think the conversation is changing is, why do we have to protect? And it's bringing light to a lot of organizations of why you need things like MFA, why you need things like, certain encryption capabilities, or whatever hardening you want to do. This is another reason why, because this is what could happen. Here's the impact.
Right.
And Mastercard, specifically for things like ransomware, we do have our own investment into information sharing initiatives to help combat things like that. For example, there's an initiative that we have participated in that shares encryption codes, or to help if that happens, what you would need to unencrypt, right, to help you recover.
Yes.
So we do things like that. But I think, is it a specific threat that we're doing things differently for? I think not necessarily. It just underlines why we have to do good security, why we have to design good security, why security is part of the definition of quality. Because when it's not, then you can, get compromises, and you can have ramifications that
Right.
do not fit your risk appetite.
And then you're reading a different story in the Wall Street Journal.
Right.
Yeah. So I get that. What do you think technology companies need to do in order to enable companies like Mastercard to fight the cyber criminals?
Well, it's a pretty broad question on, what, maybe
I mean,
vendors need
one of
to.
the things that we've talked about is this active defense, and at Excellion, we're talking about trip decoys and doing things like that, so that it at least takes longer before a major compromise happens, or maybe possibly gives us monitoring and companies notification that something is happening before they take the system down. So maybe focus on the answer in that area, the types of things that technology companies can do like that.
Well, I mean, so what you're describing is security capabilities that need to be developed, right, in order to withstand attacks. And rather than go into specific, like, oh, we need this type of solution, this type of solution, this type of solution, I think that vendors in general need to make things easier to implement. There are many companies out there that don't necessarily have great hygiene. If we're looking to solve something, hygiene is one of them.
Okay. Yeah, good.
But when you have a specific piece of tech, usually tech requires great data control, great clarity, and how data flows, access control, and those are really tough challenges that companies are dealing with anyway, right? So if you need that to be super clean in order for a tech to work, you're sort of circling the issue here, right?
Right.
So and then you get implementation that can take years, and then it fails, right? And they haven't really built in any analytics to help show the value of the tech. If you want to see, like, another thing that vendors can do is, I'm a data nerd, so of course I'm going to say that, and I'm always going to ask that question: how do you know that it's working? How do you know that it's providing value? How do you know that it's going to benefit me? Right? And just like security is often bolted on at the end of something,
Right. I mean, that's
data
the whole
measurement
thing.
capabilities is also bolted on the end, right, of a lot of tools. They forget to say, well, at some point someone's going to ask if this is working.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Right?
the challenge with the software industry, is that years ago, we were building software and getting it to market as quickly as possible, and now, and
It still
security,
happens.
yeah, it does. But I think really the big thing that we need to focus on, at least we're talking a lot about this at Excellion, is developing with security first, and making sure that you've got those things, like you said, monitoring, analytics, making sure that that it's working, um, as a priority. So yeah, I mean, it's critical. And I think you're going to start seeing more and more companies now developing software with security first, rather
Oh
than
yeah, and
yeah.
analytics,
And that,
really,
yeah,
analytics is important. You have to be able to see the value of the tool and the impact of the tool, or whatever solution it might be.
yeah,
And that's a consistent area of opportunity for a lot of vendors that I've noticed. There
yeah,
are a few that have really invested in that, and I'll tell you those tools are beloved. You never want to let go. And when you hear of a new solution that provides a need that has great data behind it and gives you insights into the value of the tool, and
yeah. It's worth taking a look at, right?
it's
Yeah.
pretty good. It's gonna get that meeting.
That's good. So, what has surprised you most in your career? And that's a very broad
Which
question. So,
career?
exactly,
Because I've had many.
exactly. I mean, we're mostly focused on cybersecurity, but I have asked this question in a broad way and have gotten some really interesting answers. So I sort of leave it broad intentionally. And I was, so just side note. So one time I went in for an interview, and this is so many years ago, and the woman said, "Tell me, tell me about you." And I said, "Okay." And I just started from the beginning of time. And so now I always ask that question in my interview. And it's really interesting, the type of people, the personalities, and how they answer it. They get like, "I mean, now?" Or, well, I'm like, "Whenever." And I just
Started with
love
a
the way.
spark in an eye, some
Exactly.
music and fancy candles. Okay.
Right. Anyway, so what has surprised you most in your career?
I'll tell you, there's a cognitive dissonance factor that's gonna play into this answer because, obviously you're going to what comes to mind is what you've been thinking about lately, and I've had these talks with various industry groups about getting into security and whatever. And so, you know what I love about this community that was surprising to me that I had no idea existed when I really threw myself in to security is that there is the community of security professionals is fantastic. It's amazing, right? Just the connections that are made. And I'll tell you, um, every day, several times a day, I get an IM or a text or some sort of message, phone call, email, in the different groups that I'm in for people that are just telling me about their day or asking for advice, or I do that, for them, and we
Right.
just stay in contact. And the willingness to help each other out is is really something special. I don't remember that happening as much when I was in accounting. You know, uh,
Okay.
I mean, even in consulting within the company, yes. And when I was like at Deloitte, there was Deloitters that helped each other out, and you had this community of Deloitters,
Right.
right? But here, I mean, the people that I talk to every day are in all kinds of industries, all kinds of companies, and they're just super smart and very kind. And of course, there's some stinkers out there. I mean, security seems to be a self-selection in for some other types of personalities, but there's a lot of good ones. There's a lot of good people out there,
Yeah.
and I've been really blessed to connect with
That's
many, many
yeah.
of them.
That's really interesting that you say that, because, and I was thinking as you're talking about all what, so I've been doing, well, we went virtual last year, obviously, in March, and I used to do these interviews and moderate panels in person. And it's a heck of a lot easier now that it's all virtual, because, you can basically do it from your living room, your office, your, doesn't matter where, which makes it a lot easier. But I have I probably built a network of CISOs, cybersecurity executives, about 125 since last, right, probably March, April. And I literally could, like, agree with you 100%. I could call them up or email them, and they would, if I had a question to ask, or if said, hey, I've got this a space to fill in the panel, they jump to it. They're nice. They love talking with each other and helping each other out. And I see the email exchanges that go back and forth as we're getting ready for a panel and after a panel. So I couldn't agree with you more. It's really interesting, and I feel like they really understand they need each other. You all need each other, and that's an important part of your answer. I really like that. That's good. So one last question: what do you like to do when you're not in security mode, cybersecurity mode?
You know, what's funny is that I do a lot of things in the security community, even when I'm not working, right? So there's security still lives,
Right.
even outside of my primary job. But aside from that, it may
Yeah.
surprise you that I really love to laugh a lot.
Really, I did not know
Like,
that.
I know it can be a shock. So I love movies and I love being outside. So outdoor movies are awesome, right? But I love hiking. If I could be outside, I'd be outside all day. If
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that was, but in like a chaise, but like with a
Right.
cocktail and some sort of book, like like or maybe hiking. Like I'm just like this constant yin and yang of things. If I could be on a beach, I would. But I also love to like snuggle by a fire, with a book or something. So I love reading. I will devour a book. Like I have to be. It's like a plate of cookies for me, which I will also tackle. Like I love a
That
good carb. I love a good carb and a good
yes,
snack, right? And
I
some espresso. I'm all about those things.
yes, same.
you know but yeah, I just, life is so short and you never know what's going to happen. As so I guess that's sort of not a great answer, because what do I do outside of CISO mode, right?
No, I
I
think,
just
well,
love life regardless. I try
yeah,
to
I know I
focus
can
on that,
tell.
even in the
Yeah,
really crazy days, even in the 4 brownie days,
right.
right? So let me tell you the story. It's so funny. So I love a carb. If you haven't known, I love a good carb. And so my team knows that if I'm eating a bagel, okay,
Uh-oh.
something's going on, right? Because my God, bagels, oh, so good.
Right.
Right, but it's like the worst carb, but it's glorious. And there have been days where I've had 3 or 4 a day. But anyway, so I traveled to my teams, and I was at the headquarters in O'Fallon, and it was somebody's birthday. And so I thought, I had like overheard that it was his birthday, and so I took my team out to lunch. We're at the cafeteria. It's got a great cafeteria in there. We're all eating, and I like, get whatever you want, and I I get this tray of desserts, right? Because I didn't know what this person liked for his birthday, and so I was
Right.
like, just get it all, and I just just got one of everything, And so I have this tray, and there's probably like 5 pieces of cake and 9 cookies, like just whatever. It was full, you could barely see. And one of my security engineers comes up to me and he's like, "Is something wrong? Did something
That
happen?"
was all for you. You're like, we better clear the deck right now.
I was like, "No, this is for the guy's birthday. But you could, put a couple on your plate for me. We just celebrate it."
Oh my gosh, so funny. I know. Well, your energy and your enthusiasm just shines through. And I know I had somebody once tell me that you have to disconnect in order to find inspiration. And I think that, like your need to go outside and devour a book or eat all the carbs, which I love all those things as well. It's just important to have some time away, even if it's just a few minutes here and there, because it does clear your mind, and you have a big job, an important job, and it's fun to hear your laughter and your enthusiasm for things. So I really appreciate
Hey, you have to have a sense of humor.
that.
You
For
have to have a
sure.
sense of humor, or you ain't never gonna make it in this industry,
That's
right?
right. That's right. That's the final, we'll end on that final piece of advice. So thank you so much for being here. And this concludes our Women in Cyber interview. And we'll see you next time.